What's going on, guys? Welcome into Process Over Results Live, the Friday show with myself, my co-host Joel Holka from 4for4.com and Fantasy Labs. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Not too bad. Last week could have been a little bit better, I think, for quite a few people. But the best thing about DFS is we get another shot at it in a couple of days. So it's really just excited to get to the slate and kind of put last week in the past, I guess.
Oh, no, absolutely. Well, that's the thing is just like, week 12 was like a week to forget where like, even if you had your process correct, it was just wrong. And honestly, I've talked to a lot of people this week and some people were like, oh, I need to change what I'm doing and this and that. I'm like, no, you don't. It's one bad week, right? Like in our weekly guest, Jake Ciely is here with us, all in kid, as you guys know him. Jake, you're with me, right? Like you don't change your process just because one bad week, right?
No, because the fact was, if you won every single week, we wouldn't be doing podcasts and stuff like that. I'd be off in Vegas playing poker every single day. Screw you guys. I would be doing something else. Hey, look, that's the fact. It's football. This is, I made an offhanded joke, and I think you guys appreciate this too, is when I do the show on Fantasy Sports Radio, one of them was with Benny Ricciardi, and we were talking about this week, Anquan Bolden versus Frank Gore, seasonal, but he was like, let's play a lineup, and DFS will go head-to-head at $1,000. And I'm like, dude, you know as well as anybody that a head-to-head lineup 1 week doesn't mean you're the better player, doesn't mean I'm the better player, because, like you said, your process, your strategy can be right, and because it's fantasy football, you can be completely wrong and lose a week.
No, head-to-head is it's a really flawed system too, Jake, and I know you know because we're in the Flex League together. I came to New York for that one this year, and I am like the leader in points in that league, but I'm in second place, and it's still like it's a total like rare chance that I miss the playoffs despite having the best record. I'm in second place right now, but there's like every team is like 7-6 or 7-5 and 6 or 6-6, right?
No, you're okay though because you have the most points scored, so you're in no matter what. So because we do the smart thing in our league, because fantasy football is so unlucky at times, is the sixth spot goes to the most points scored that didn't make the playoffs.
Oh, you see, that's smart. One of the other leagues I have, actually, one of the guys did that, and I told him it was a fantastic idea that I've never done it, but yeah. So if you do that, top 5 spots make it on record, and the number 6 spot the most points of the remaining teams, which is like a really neat idea. So, we're not here to talk about redraft. We are here to talk about DFS and Week 13. We're gonna get back on track this week, guys. Like I just feel like this week I have a good grasp on it. A lot of the players, there's a lot of injuries taking place, a lot of people that are considered chalk that maybe I don't consider chalk. But before we do that, we're going to go to Joe, because Joe, every single week, he gives you guys game selection. So if you're a DFS player, and let's say that last year you were just dabbling, playing maybe $100, $200 a week, and now this week you're starting to play more, let's talk about game selection, Joe. Let's go to you, and what's the art of game selection? What's the tournaments that people should be playing this week if they're playing in cheaper tournaments or if they're playing in some higher up ones?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can go. I think that it's something that when you're just starting out at DFS, you kind of just got to figure out what works best for you. Like some people kind of like playing that exposure game, and then others kind of like to kind of go up in stakes a little bit and play kind of just a little bit more chalky lineups or just one lineup. And there's a lot of different ways you can go. This week's just kind of back to normal almost after all those Thanksgiving tournaments last week. DraftKings is running a bunch of those final qualifiers for their live final next week in New York. So that was pretty cool. I mean, I'm definitely going to fire into those a bit. Obviously, we know that qualifiers are basically lighting money on fire, but I mean, we play this for those big upside tournaments. I think you got to have some fun and play a couple lineups into those for sure. Definitely going to fire into those. But as far as like value at kind of the lower stakes, I'm still firing into the play action, the $3 play action. It's tough because it is a field of 430,000, but it's really the only tournament you can play at the low stakes that has a pretty nice top prize of 50K. So I do like it just because it's kind of a flat payout structure. You can kind of get, I think it's only 5%. 5% of the field to first place. So it's relatively flat, which is something you look for. It's good value on your money. We've talked about the slant pretty much every week at the $9 level, 29% of the field getting paid out. But one tournament we haven't talked about yet is, as far as the high stakes one, is the Wildcat. It's kind of a little bit more popular in kind of like our industry a bit. A lot of people like to fire into that opposed to playing 150 lineups in like something like the Millie Maker that's extremely top heavy and a large field. The Wildcat is a $333 entry, but if you can afford the Millie Maker, you should consider this just because the field is a lot smaller and you still have a a lot of upside because there's 150,000 up top, but you only have a field that is 5,000 people. So, and when you're going up in stakes, the rake is going to be a lot lower as well. So that's something to consider.
No, that's awesome. And that's the thing is just like, a lot of people are kind of lost. And honestly, if you go back as far as 2 years ago, I was lost when it came to tournament selection, things like that. It really makes a difference. And honestly, before we get to Jake's lock of the week, because every week we're going to go to Jake and we're going to talk to him about a player that he's going to have in, 99% of his lineups. But before we do, I want to thank you guys again for allowing us to get a sponsor for the show. And we do have one. It is rototracker.com/POR. And guys, I want you guys to make sure you go there because what it does, it not only supports the show, it lets them know that we're sending people their way and it helps continue that partnership that we want. So if you don't know what RotoTracker is, it's an amazing new tool for daily fantasy sports players to help you get a grip on the game selection that we just talked about. I hated keeping track of my results, going through all my spreadsheets, going through all my data, trying to figure out what games I'm good in. I just want to see quickly and easily how well I'm doing and where I need to improve. And basically, what do I need to research? I learned that I needed to get better in tournaments. I've always been a cash game player. So what I did, actually, it's funny because now that I'm out in Arizona, I can't play DFS, as you guys all know. But I actually went to RotoTracker and signed up and everything like that. It's totally free. That's what I'm saying. It literally costs you nothing to go over there. You just get a free account and it'll analyze. It's 250 of your games for free. And if you want to go to premium from there, you actually do get a discount if you go in through our link. So again, that's rototracker.com/POR as in process over results. I know Joe can vouch for this. He uses their tools all the time. He actually is the one who found them as a sponsor because, he uses their product. He was just like, this is a perfect fit. It's basically a one click. It's got browser extensions on Chrome, Firefox that pulls your data right from the DFS site. Like seriously, there's a download button on DraftKings, FanDuel, and you bring it right into there. It's so simple. Go check it out. Sign up for free. RotoTracker account now. Go to rototracker.com/POR. And thanks to our special partnership with them, if you ever upgrade to premium, you'll automatically get 10% off just by using that link. So thank you guys again for helping us out, getting a sponsor on the show. We appreciate it. Now, let's get into the fun stuff, guys. We're going to start talking some players. Jake, let's just move past week 12, right? Let's get into Jake's ace of the week and find out who he's going to be playing in his lineups. And guys, if you guys didn't know, Jake is he's sitting pretty at number 2 in the Fantasy Pros accuracy competition. Are these players robots, Jake, or are we going to have some off weeks?
You're going to have some off weeks. But this thing is, I think we're going Brandon Cooks this week.
Don't do that.
It started off so well as Tyrell Williams. Then I got LaShawn McCoy for a half a game, and then I got Brandon Cooks for a 0. So it's just trending downward, and now it's got to go back the other direction. Well, I can't do worse unless I take Vernon Davis and he gets 1 catch for -4 yards against the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, that's possible. I can lose points here. No. So, actually, look, the trend, I'm going back to running back. If you want to say back and forth the other week, there's a little trend for you right there. There's a couple that I like. I think running back is a little tough this week not to pay up. There's a few, I'm sure we'll get into some of the names, but the one I like, and I think he's pretty obvious, he's going to be chalky, not so much in tournament play, but Jordan Howard, for the fact he's going against San Francisco run defense. We all know what the San Francisco run defense is, and the best part about it is it's not just the San Francisco run defense. It's the fact that Jordan Howard has 528 yards and a touchdown over the last 4 games. His worst game is against the Giants, where he had 99 yards, and the Giants' run defense and defense overall the past month plus has been dominant. On the very, very positive side of it, too, the San Francisco 49ers, something else I like to look at, give up the most plays to opponents, 70.4 per game, which is ridiculous, which means, heck, if Matt Barkley even wants to go ahead and throw 50-plus times again, guess what? He's still going to get his touches, which was surprising enough that he got touches to be a top 10 running back last week. So I think Jordan Howard is a lock in every single one of my cash lineups.
I like him. I do like him. Now, my question to you, before we get into quarterbacks, I'm just going to ask you about it because I actually like the running back on the other side of that ball. While we're here, I want to talk to you guys like Carlos Hyde. I know I told you I liked him last week. I think a lot of people are going to be on Colin Kaepernick this week. I would actually fade Kaepernick. I mean, you have to have some exposure, obviously, against the Bears, but do you guys have any issue with Carlos Hyde? Like, I think I honestly, he's somebody I want to put in every single lineup.
No, the only reason I didn't bring up Carlos Hyde because I like both of them, and I had a feeling you would after last week, so I didn't want to go with Carlos Hyde. I do. I like him a lot. I actually included him in my column this week over on Roto Experts as one of my DraftKings guys that people are going to look over because here's the numbers that I have on him. since he's been 100% healthy, 14 and 20.5 points with 22 and 18 touches. They're getting him back into that workhorse role. You talked about it last week. I know some people are going to look at the matchup and say the Chicago Bears run defense has been good, which it has, but they're missing, 3-4 pieces this week? I don't think everybody's paying attention to that fact.
Yeah, they're missing 3 of their front 7 this week. It's guaranteed now. We just found out that's a lock. And honestly, Jarrell Freeman, once they lost him to the PED suspension, they've allowed 2 teams back-to-back to go over 100 yards rushing. That's something the Bears only did twice in the first 9 games. So this is not the same run defense that you're seeing. And that's the best part, is that you're going to get lower ownership on Carlos Hyde, just because a lot of people, what they do is they go over to the DraftKings page and they say, fantasy points against Bears. What I think they're like 6th or something like that, maybe 7th. But so they're scared of the matchup and they're going to play Kaepernick. Me personally, I like Hyde. What do you think on the situation, Joe?
Yeah, first off, I do really like Howard. I think he's probably even cash viable this week if you can't fit in both Bell and David Johnson. Obviously, you would love to, but both those guys are so high priced. It's going to be a week, I think, where you're going to have to find value somewhere, or at least pay down somewhere. Kind of with you on Kaepernick, haven't rostered him near enough this year, and it seems like kind of a situation that now that everyone's on him, it doesn't really seem like a good time to kind of jump on board. I like the Hyde call a lot. I know you were on him last week. I wasn't necessarily on him last week, but I played him in a couple of lineups basically because of what you said, and it worked out. The few things that did work out last week for me. But yeah, no, I don't mind a Hyde call, especially with Howard. Actually, kind of a lot of people are talking about him right now for good reason. But like you said, people are going to see that big green 49ers matchup, and people are going to want to click on him. And I think it's just kind of a natural pivot play for someone that's going to get volume.
I actually think it's viable that you could actually play Kaepernick and Hyde. I don't think that like you can't play them both, but I think I'd rather play Hyde. Let's go back to the quarterbacks. We just mentioned Kaepernick. Let's talk about some of our favorite quarterback plays. We'll go through and give one of our top ones, like if you're going to pay up at quarterback, and maybe if you want to pay down. Jake, who do you want to pay up for at quarterback if you're going to pay?
Same person I paid up for last week. That was in action, not an exaggeration. It was in 90% of my lineups last week. I'm doing the exacts, probably not as much this week because tournament-wise, I think there are going to be some people who pay up for him after what happened last week. But it's Drew Brees. There's no question about it. And you know what? As crazy as it might sound, I don't know that necessarily you need to go Brandon Cooks, because to bring this all full circle, I know we're going to get to the wide receivers, but I do want to point this out, is Monday, Tuesday, we're like, go double down on Brandon Cooks. There's no way he goes 0 again at home. The numbers at home, we talked about him last week. It all made sense, as you said. The logic was there. Drew Brees averaging over 340 yards per game at home, 3 touchdowns. The numbers are there for him. But as the week goes on, you look at every single site out there, it's double down on Brandon Cooks, double down on Brandon Cooks. Guess what? I'm fading going right back to Michael Thomas, so it's going to be Brees and Thomas again for me this week.
Okay, so Joe, I want to know if I actually love Willie Snead here. Like, I think the matchup for Willie Snead is probably the best of the Saints wide receivers. And here's the thing, like, I'm curious about your guys' take on this. So Joe, I'll ask you first. So staying on Drew Brees, do you think it would make sense if the Lions decided to say, we're going to put Darius Slay on the bigger wide receiver, Michael Thomas, and then Nevin Lawson will match up with Brandon Cooks, which would be a solid matchup for Cooks. But really, why would you have Darius Slay on Brandon Cooks, and then you're gonna leave Nevin Lawson against Michael Thomas? Willie Snead is gonna draw Quandre Diggs, period. Like, that's why Willie Snead's in play. I think Brees is a fantastic play. I just don't ever know who to play. I think I'd just rather play Snead this week, though.
Yeah, the Brees thing, I actually agree with quite a bit of what Jake said. Surprise, surprise. But I do really like Brees. I think Brees is one of the best cash plays this week for sure. But for the reasons you said, if I'm playing him in cash, I'm leaning towards playing him naked. But Thomas is probably the guy I'm going to still, regardless if he does have a tougher matchup. I just think he's their best wide receiver, in my opinion. I do like Snead just for the matchup reasons. But I think in GPPs, if you want access to this game, I think it's kind of a game you can game stack in general. And that kind of limits your downside as far as picking the right one, which is not easy to do. But I'm with you on Cooks. It was looking to the point like, oh, he had a goose egg, let's play him at 5% ownership. But now everyone's talking about him. I think it could be a situation where he ends up being like almost the donkey play of the week at like 15% ownership. I don't want him anywhere near that ownership. So I'm probably not going to play him this week just for those reasons. I think maybe we are in just a complete bubble and no one's going to be on him. But I'm nervous now.
I did my scouting on the other websites and just to double check my theory there. And trust me, I think you're right. I think it's going to get towards the 12 to 15% range because so many people are saying the exact same thing. Real quick, though, for what you were saying about Snead, I agree with you on face value, Mike. The only concern I have is because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I hate that cliche, but at the same time, I don't know that the Saints don't move around Cooks and move him into the slot sometimes just to get him the ball this week and do what they can to really have him a big game.
It seemed like Drew Brees and Sean Payton were kind of annoyed by the comments, and honestly, I would be too if I was a coach. Like, keep that in house. There's no reason to go outside. Willie Snead, the reason I like him, he's seen 46 targets over the last 7 weeks, so it's been really consistent target wise. I think Snead's in play for cash for me. Honestly, if you're looking for like a cheaper wide receiver, I think he's 5,100. Now, my only concern in this game is that, and we're going to move on because we can't talk about the Saints all game, the whole show. But my only concern in that game is that the opponents of the Lions, they only run 61 plays per game, which is the 5th lowest in the NFL. So I'm wondering if they're trying to play keep away a little bit from Breeze. I'm going to go down to my favorite play of the week. I'm going to bypass Matt Ryan because I love Matt Ryan. Like, that's my second favorite quarterback play. My favorite is Russell Wilson. I'm going back to Russell Wilson. I haven't heard many people talk about him. A lot of people are talking about Brandon Cooks and trying to get back on him. Me, with Russell Wilson, I think what he does well, I think that he matches against this Carolina team ideally. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, there's nothing to dislike about this matchup for Russell Wilson. They're going to be without their starting strong safety. They're going to be without their top pass rusher. We already know Luke Kuechly is out. Luke Kuechly's replacement, A.J. Klein, last week, he graded as the number 97 linebacker with PFF in coverage. Last week, him alone, he allowed 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. So, like, honestly, they're going to get destroyed over the middle of the field, and that's exactly where Doug Baldwin and Jimmy Graham operate. I love Russell Wilson. Joe, give us your take on one of your quarterbacks. Like, who do you want if you're going to pay down maybe?
Yeah, I love Wilson. First off, he's probably going to be my number one tournament exposure at quarterback this week. I mean, he ran 8 times for 80 yards last week, so that floor is going to be there. Now that he's moving a bit more, home favorite, I like those. And obviously the Panthers matchup is fantastic. This isn't necessarily a week I normally kind of want to pay down, but it's tough because there's all these high price plays that I want to play too. So the guy that I'm looking at aside from Russell Wilson, maybe Jake's got a cheaper guy to talk about, but I really like Aaron Rodgers this week. I think that, he's led all quarterbacks in scoring over his last 5 weeks, and this is the cheapest he's ever been on DraftKings. So,
are you worried about the hamstring?
Maybe a little bit for the rushing kind of thing, but I still think he's a guy with 3 touchdown upside, and that's what you want in tournaments. And I don't know if you're going to get him at a lower ownership. I think 6,800 is is he 68 or 6,700 on here?
67. He's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, geez, but there could be some snow in this game too, which I think is going to drive his ownership down even more. And that doesn't really bother me a whole lot. But who are you looking at as far as cheap guys? That's something that I would kind of be interested in for sure in tournaments this week.
Joe, or Jake, who are you looking at? Cheaper option?
I'm not really looking at cheap guys, honestly. I hate to say, Russell Wilson's on my radar. I talked about Drew Brees. Somebody else that's on mine, and speaking of Drew Brees, I've talked about this a lot of times this week, and people just don't seem to be having the reaction I expected them to, but Ben Roethlisberger, because everybody wants to talk about Drew Brees' home road splits. Yeah. And when I pulled them up, because I knew they were egregious, Ben Roethlisberger's home road splits are insane. Like, he makes Drew Brees look like the most consistent player in the history of the world, because I jotted these down too. So this is over the last 3 years at home. 34.9 fantasy points per game, 337 yards, 8.8 yards per attempt, 3.8 touchdowns, which puts him on a 60 touchdown pace for a season. On the road, it's 17.7, 272, 7.5 yards per attempt, and 1.1 touchdowns, which is the 18 touchdown pace. It's ridiculous how much better he's at home. So I'm looking at Big Ben. I'm looking at, you said, Russell Wilson. Obviously Kaepernick is a great cash play. Everybody's going to be on him. The only cheap person I even kind of like is Tyrod Taylor, because I think everybody's going to see the Oakland. And you saw what happened last week is Khalil Mack is like, oh, these rangy linebackers, they're all over the place. They're going to be stopped. The one thing they can't do is stop up the middle, which is when we get to running back, hint, hint, one of the people I'm going to be looking at. But I also like Tyrod Taylor to be able to possibly get some rushing yards. But the Sammy Watkins issue not being 100%, and the fact that, any given week he could go out there and have 20 pass attempts and get you 150 yards, he's a big risk. That's, again, he's purely a tournament play in my mind.
Yeah, I'm just worried about his prospects for in the wide receiving game because Robert Woods is out. Sammy Watkins might play one snap. They said he's got another broken bone in his foot and he's going to play. This is the stupidest thing ever. Honestly, I don't know
if he gets you 25 points, nobody's going to have him. And that's why, like I said, he's purely tournament.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Go ahead. I'm just saying, he's not really on my tournament radar. He's that guy. He's got a really high floor. I just don't know how high his ceiling is. And now that Watkins is going to be banged up, maybe not even playing, that limits his ceiling even more. I mean, I love the running game, but I think that's really the only play in this.
I honestly think I'd rather just pay up like 400 more and get Kaepernick if you want to go that route, and if you want to get like a high floor rushing guy. Outside of that, I think one player. Now, Joe, I know we talked about before the show that we wanted to give somebody that we actually liked at maybe potentially below 5% ownership, and this might be the week where Cam Newton has the lowest ownership of his career. It wouldn't shock me either. He's 6,600. I'm not a big fan of the way Newton's playing ball this year, but we all know his floor. We all know what his ceiling is just by running the ball. And the Seattle defense is not what they were 2 years ago. They're missing Michael Bennett. It seems like they're going to get Earl Thomas back for this game. But honestly, I'm just saying, if you're making tons of tournament lineups, I would throw a stack, maybe Cam Newton and Greg Olsen in there, or run Cam naked just to get a share of him. I just think he's going to be extremely low owned. Let's talk about running backs, because running backs and wide receivers, there's kind of a lot this week. Obviously, we don't need to talk about David Johnson. David Johnson's a freak. He has more receiving yards than DeAndre Hopkins. He has more receiving yards than Allen Robinson. So basically, by rostering David Johnson at 9,500, you're getting a wide receiver and a running back and basically one thing. And Washington's horrible against the run. But Joe, I know we talk about him every week, man, and I haven't really loved him, but this week I actually really do like Spencer Ware an awful lot. Have you looked into Ware at all?
Yeah, I played Ware last week. I think I've been I don't know if I'm biased or what, but I don't know if I have valued Tyreek Hill and how much he hurts Spencer Ware, or Spencer Ware just hasn't been performing well. I'm still kind of wrestling with that in my head. I think the fact that Tyreek is just kind of getting those little dump-off passes really limits Ware's upside. It's not that I don't think that Ware's a good player. I do. I just think that not really having Jeremy Maclin at full kind of capacity for these last couple of games has really hurt him, because, I mean, as far as they're not going downfield, and that really hurts the running game in general. I think I like Tyreek probably more than Ware this week, which is probably why most people should play Ware if I'm not playing him this week, because I've been playing him all year.
Jake, what's your take on Spencer Ware, man?
Oh, I'm a big fan of him for this week. I've been a fan last week and expected a little bit more. It didn't come through. I think Joe brings up a good point about the effect of Tyreek Hill in that situation. Now Macklin's likely back for this game. I'm looking at really the fact that the Falcons are one of the best matchups you can find this week. They have 6 games where they allowed 25-plus points, and they're the third most in fantasy points per game. So I just think this is a matchup here where earlier this season, everybody remembers, about 3 or 4, I don't remember, I think it's 3 games of over 20-plus points, and it's that kind of workload that he's back and getting again. It really hasn't translated the last 2 weeks, but I think this is a game where it can finally kick through and get you, the 80 yards in the running game, and then another 40 or 50 out of the backfield receiving, and now you're looking at, you might not get the bonus for the 100 yards rushing, but those combined yards and a touchdown would have a great day.
Yeah, and that's the thing is just what Joe was talking about. I think his ownership is going to be extremely low for this game. I think people think if you're paying 6,400, you should have a lock, and I kind of feel like he is this week against Atlanta. And the reason I say that, if you guys were to watch this Atlanta defense when they played against Philly, remember that week where everybody was playing Darren Sproles, and they were all mad because he didn't go off, because that was the Ryan Matthews week. Ryan Matthews basically came in the game, and they didn't want to take him out of the game because he just kept running all over. Why would you stop running on them? Atlanta's got enough issues. They just lost Desmond Trufant seemingly for the season. I don't think he's going to play again this season. It seems like he has a torn pectoral. So they have worries in their secondary. And in this game, where I consider it to be a high-scoring game, which is why I like Matt Ryan in this game, I think Tyreek Hill's a fine play too. But this is a game where I want to game stack it. Honestly, I kid you not. And the reason that I like him so much, if you go through Atlanta's game log and find the running backs that have seen 17 touches against them, I bring up 17 touches because Spencer Ware has seen 17 carries alone in 5 of his last 7 healthy games. So here's the running backs that have totaled 17 or more touches against the Falcons. You had Doug Martin back way early in the season. He scored basically 15 points. Mark Ingram, 20.7. Kristen Michael, 23.3. Melvin Gordon, 36.1. Ryan Matthews, 27.9. And then David Johnson last week with 30.1. Like, that's why I look at this and I'm like, if I project this game to be high scoring, I do think Spencer Ware finds the end zone, if not twice. I know he's long overdue. I'm sure his expected rushing output is like below where it's supposed to be right now. So I do love Spencer Ware. Joe, who's one of the running backs that you want to try and fit in your lineups?
Yeah, I mean, you're just getting as much exposure as you can to Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson. It's going to kind of limit your roster construction. Aside from those guys, it's tough this week. I think running back is really tough this week. Spencer Ware is interesting. Jordan Howard's interesting. One guy I'm looking at kind of from that same game from before, Theo Riddick. I think he's going to be really chalky, but I definitely think he's cash viable kind of in the Superdome. It kind of just plays to his strengths, I think, in that game. It's tough. I think it's a really tough week. I don't have really any strong takes on any of these lower price guys. I think kind of Thixon is fine at 3,700. I mean, he had a season high 17 touches last week, and I mean his snap rate's been increasing 4 weeks straight. And Terrence West is just kind of being overtaken, I think. So I'm fine with Ken Dixon at 3,700. Aside from that, it's gonna be a tough week at running back, I think, if you're not playing those top guys.
What about you, Jake? Do you like Deion Lewis at 3,800? I love Deion Lewis this week.
I'm okay on it. I'm kind of worried about this game as a whole, honestly, because the Tom Brady factor without Rob Gronkowski, we know the numbers. They're just there. It's a fact at this point. And I'm not saying this can't be a game with Deion Lewis. And that's why he's intriguing. I actually probably will have him in a lineup or two. What I'm paying up for if I can't get a Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson is LaShawn McCoy. I mentioned it before. That was my hint. I actually like LaShawn McCoy a lot this week. To go back to what I was talking about, again, the one thing the Raiders defense can't do is they can get sideline to sideline quicker than anybody in the league almost. The fact is they can't do it up the middle. And up the middle, LaShawn McCoy can have that kind of game where, he just breaks one off like he did last week. He gets to that second level and forget about it. You just have an amazing day on your hands right there. So I really like LaShawn McCoy. If I can't, he's kind of my top end play if I can't get a David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell situation. If I'm going pure punt, you want one down by Deion Lewis, I'll give you one more. And I actually hope the person in front of him does suit up because I think they'll keep his ownership at about 1%. Denard Robinson, man.
Oh, man.
Look, I'm just saying. It's a pure punt. There's nothing that I can say that isn't a huge risk with Denard Robinson. But if TJ Yeldon suits up, and everybody's going to say, I don't want to trust him. But if TJ Yeldon's out, people are going to jump on Denard Robinson. He has the 100-yard potential. Now, can it happen against Denver? Probably not. But there's that potential. Heck, all he has to do is score 10 points, and he already hit 3 times value.
I'm going to call him a punt your money away.
What's his ceiling, though? Like, you like him in cash? Because I don't think you can play him in tournaments.
Oh, absolutely in a cash. No, I'm not talking about tournaments. Like tournaments, he would have to hit 6 times value, and I don't see that coming.
Right.
No, there's some people talking about playing TJ Yeldon. I don't think I'm in that camp. TJ Yeldon just hasn't looked very good this year, honestly. And it stinks because I'm a guy that liked him coming out of college. I've just had to kind of change my perspective on him as a running back. What about?
You know what, though? Joe, you just challenged me. I'm going to put one lineup with Denard Robinson in. Forget it. Screw you. I'm doing it.
If he goes off, you'll be the only guy that has him.
What about – hold on a second. What about LeGarrette Blount, guys? I like LeGarrette Blount this week, especially – so if you're playing on FanDuel, I think this could be a LeGarrette Blount 2-touchdown game. I want to say I saw a stat. The last 2 times that Tom Brady and the Patriots have played against a Jeff Fisher defense – or Jeff Fisher-led team, I should say, they've outscored them like 97-7 or something like that. So, LeGarrette Blount's overdue for a touchdown.
Last time that wasn't a Jeff Fisher team with Aaron Donald, though. I'm worried about this game.
Aaron Donald up the middle?
Yeah. I see your appeal. I definitely think they lean more on the – look, this is what they're going to do. They're going to lean more on the run with not Gronkowski out there. But I don't know. The only person that even intrigues me in this game is Julian Edelman because I think a lot of people are going to be on Malcolm Mitchell and ignore the fact – we're about to get to wide receivers, but they're going to ignore the fact of the snap count last week, 92% for Chris Hogan, 37 for Malcolm Mitchell. And if everybody's going to complain about Taylor Gabriel, and all his potential for the fact of how little he's on the field, why is nobody saying about Malcolm Mitchell? But that being said, that's why I think they do more run this week. I don't know, man. I think this could be an upset week. This is the Rams beating the Patriots at home type of feel that I got.
I can't see that happening. Like Tom Brady losing 2 home games in a row. I just can't see it.
That is true.
I am concerned about Brady, though, and his health. I'm concerned about Brady and his health, and I honestly think that he's actually hurt. I've watched his last 2 games, and he just doesn't look right. He's not completing the passes like he would. He's making – there's some bad misses in there, and I know the stat line against San Francisco looked good, but he didn't really look good that game.
The real key is Jeff Fisher's – he's going to stop Danny Woodhead, man, at all costs.
Well, I mean, if he does that, then I think that's lights out. I don't think that the Patriots can win if they don't have Danny Woodhead doing anything.
Exactly.
That's absurd.
Do you have anybody else, Joe, you're looking at? So you said you didn't have any grip. What do you guys think about Devontae Booker? I think Devontae Booker at 5,100, I think he'll be pretty low owned. I don't think his ceiling is crazy, but I also think that he's going to run the – like the last 2 weeks, he's had over 20 carries. They're going to have Paxton Lynch at quarterback this week. Jacksonville's weak spot, I guess, is the run game. So are we opposed to like playing Devontae Booker?
Here's the thing: I was talking. Adam Rank tweeted me after I tweeted out my rankings, and he's like, "Oh, do you love Devontae Booker still with Paxton Lynch?" And I'm like, "No." Basically, after my top 11 running backs, I just wish I could rank them all 20. Like I don't want anybody in that range from 12 to 20, and he's the inclusion. And like Jay Ajayi, all these people with terrible matchups, like Jeremy Hill's in that conversation, who I'm a fan of, that I think could be a fringe RB1 and like seasonal. But in DFS, I don't really want that appeal for what's his ceiling. And it's just all these guys are like, what are their ceilings? And with Paxton Lynch at quarterback, I just don't know. I completely agree with the theory behind it. This kind of feels like it could end up being a 10-7 game.
All right. And one more name that nobody's talking about, since like I'm the only guy talking about running backs because I feel like I can play running backs. I think that like the 5,000 to 6,000 range is the one I like. Lamar Miller, I haven't heard anybody talk about him against Green Bay. Like Green Bay can't stop the run, guys. Like I know after the first 3 weeks, everybody thought they were like the top run defense in the league, averaging like 2 yards per carry. But over their last 7 games, they've allowed 4.81 yards per carry. They've allowed 8 running back touchdowns in their last 5 games. Like I don't know why people are kind of overlooking how bad this defense is. Like I think that Lamar Miller is being overlooked, and especially he's down to 5,600.
Yeah, he's really cheap. I think it's going to keep his ownership down too. Like I think Riddick's going to be pretty chalky, and I think people are going to play Doug Martin this week too, kind of in that same range. It's interesting. Devontae Parker is someone, or sorry, Devontae Booker is someone that I was looking at. He just doesn't catch passes, and for someone that has kind of a lower ceiling, I think touchdown wise, I think that I would like him to catch some passes, and that's kind of why I've been off him.
I should have looked at that. I should have looked at Lynch when he played and see how much he targets the running backs and like how much he did in the starts, because that would interest me, because honestly, that's the part where Booker's really good. I don't think he's a good running back. Like I don't think he's good at running the ball. I think he's a better receiver, and they haven't really used him in that aspect. So
Jacksonville's number 1 in DVOA for pass catching running backs, though.
Well, there you go. So that is a concern. That's a good tidbit. Let's talk about some wide receivers, guys.
Dropping the hammer on you.
I like it. Well, it's good though. That's why I throw these things out there. I want to hear the takes, man. Jake, just don't give us another Denard Robinson at wide receiver, but let's hear some wide receivers you like.
Top end? Are we going top end first?
Well, give me a top end and give me a budget one.
Top end is Mike Evans. I love some Mike Evans this week. Actually, I just love Mike Evans, period. That's all there is to it. Mike Evans is terrific. Here's my concern. I know Odell Beckham and Antonio Brown are going to go at it this week, but both sides of it, there's actually some difficulty here. Actually, to go all the way back to quarterback, I don't like Eli Manning this week, although a lot of people seem to be on him because people don't pay attention to the fact that the Steelers' defense is actually inside the top 10 for fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, and they get after the quarterback over the last 3 or 4 games more than anybody else. And what does Eli Manning do under pressure? He throws interceptions. Like, this is where we can even talk about defenses. I think the Steelers' defense is intriguing. I think this could be a 200-yard, 1 touchdown, 3 interception type of game for Eli Manning. So I'm worried about Odell Beckham. I'm really worried about Sterling Shepard. Antonio Brown, I think he can go off against anybody. Janoris Jenkins has been limiting everybody this year, including A.J. Green. We talked about it a few weeks ago. 1 touchdown, but after that, he was pretty much held in check. So I don't know if I'm going to pay up, it's going to be Mike Evans.
Not Julio?
Julio's another one, but I just feel like everybody is taking Julio. Is that right? You see? That's who you have, Joe?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I think there's going to be people that are going to take that salary relief from Antonio Brown and move down to Julio Jones, but I don't know. I think that there's so many good options up top that I don't think he's going to be outrageously owned. But I think if you play him, I think you can play him with Matt Ryan, and that'll give you a little bit of differentiation right there. But there's another play we can talk about kind of when we get to the value guys that kind of might be a little bit of a nice pivot off of some of these really, really high price guys.
All right, Jake, who's a value?
How low do you want me to go?
Wherever you want to go and you feel safe.
The problem is I like a bunch of guys in the $6,000 range. I'm a big fan of Julian Edelman. You mentioned Doug Baldwin. I like both of them this week. I think if you look at one that I think is really sneaky, double check his price. Okay, he hit 7,000. Jordy Nelson, because I think everybody's going to be on Devontae Adams. That's a sidebar. That's really not that cheap. If I'm going even cheaper than that, to go further down the list, you mentioned the other one. I actually put Willie Snead in a few of my lineups because of the price. I think that I looked at the same matchup as the fact that the slot corner is just going to destroy Diggs, and that's really what I'm looking at there. Even if what I said before becomes a concern, they start moving around Brandon Cooks and trying to get his opportunity, I still think Snead gets plenty of his, and heck, he might throw another touchdown.
I don't know about it. I expect him to throw for one, but yeah, I like Willie Snead a lot. He's one of the guys I haven't bold on my sheet here. Joe, who are you looking at, wide receiver?
There's some lower guys. We talked about Tyreek Hill. I think you can definitely play him at 4,600. Macklin is he's gonna be back this game.
I don't think so. Yeah. I haven't heard any. He is gonna play.
No. Yep. Practice today. Expected to play.
Okay.
Oh, that hurts Tyreek Hill a little bit.
It does. I think they see kind of different kind of targets though is the thing, and Hill's seen double-digit targets in 2 of his last 3. So I really like that. He could add in a couple of rush attempts as well. And I think you can play with the cheap D. Obviously, we've seen that go off a couple times. How do you guys feel about Marvin Jones? Is he the Brandon Cooks where everyone's talking about him now, and he's not a good player?
On my list, I was going to say, and people are going to say I was crazy for. Here's the problem. According to reports, he looked bad in practice today.
Yeah, Dave Burkett, the beat writer for Detroit, said that he doesn't look like he's 100%, that he didn't look very good today in practice. So
I wanted to talk that out. I played him way too much on Thanksgiving, so I don't know if I can go there. But a lot of people like him.
Back real quick, just for Jeremy Macklin, BJ Kissel on Twitter said that Macklin practiced. It was limited, but he practiced and he's set to play this week. Well, that could change, and obviously you go right back to Tyreek Hill if he's out. But as of right now, it looks like he's going to play.
All right. So how do you guys feel about Tyler Boyd? I think that after last week, I think a lot of people are starting to move off him a little bit, but he actually has the best matchup of anybody on Cincinnati this week. Tyler Eifert's going to have trouble doing anything against that defense. Eifert has an awful matchup. Doug Peterson comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree, and if you guys remember, Kansas City's been number one last year against tight ends. They're number 3 this year, and actually Philadelphia is number 2 against tight ends. So I don't want to play him. I don't think anybody wants to play Brandon LaFell. So what about Tyler Boyd, who's going to be matching up with Jalen Mills, who is the PFF's lowest graded cornerback?
Go ahead, Jake.
I've been jumping in too much.
No, it's. I think he's fine for a lot of those reasons. I think he could be under-owned kind of. After some people were on him last week, it's just not a game I'm really targeting right now. I get that he's cheap. I kind of at that price range, I think I'd rather play Mohamed Sanu. And that was when we were talking about earlier, a guy that could be kind of sub 4% owned. I think that Sanu is kind of my favorite guy in that range in tournaments, just because, I think he still has a really high ceiling. He had 8 targets last week, which he caught all of, and everyone wants to play Gabriel now. But, I just think that last week when Sanu was kind of having to deal with Tyrann Mathieu, I think that his poor game was kind of a little bit overblown, and I think he might be one of the best leverage plays off the board, especially if Julio does end up being kind of in that 20% range. And I think you can get Sanu at probably sub 4%.
So
go ahead, Mike.
Sanu is going to match up with Philip Gaines and Steven Nelson. Those are the 2, I guess, weakest corners on KC. He'll see. Apparently, they're going to dedicate Philip Gaines to the slot now, which is weird. He wasn't doing good outside. Now they think moving him in the slot and then moving their slot corner, Steven Nelson, to the outside to cover Julio is going to work. I don't know what Kansas City's doing, but it's not working. Basically, that entire left side of the field, so when your wide receiver lines up to the left, which is Julio lines up in the slot or to the left about 78% of the time. So Julio Jones, his matchup, Sanu is a good one too, and he is a leverage play. Honestly, you may be able to stack all 3. You may be able to go Julio, Sanu, and Matt Ryan. I
really like Matt Ryan this week just for that reason. You can play all 3 of them for sure.
I agree. And I think Gabriel, we obviously know if he's left one-on-one against Marcus Peters, he could win a one-on-one matchup too. So I think that they're all in play. You guys didn't mention my guy, Doug Baldwin. He's got to be played this week.
Yeah,
6,700. You did?
Yeah, at the very top, I said your boy Doug. That's why I didn't focus on him. But go ahead, because I have two more. But go ahead on Doug Baldwin. Yeah, I threw his name out there because we had already touched on him.
Yeah, no, we definitely touched on him. Well, basically about the middle of the field and what Carolina does. So their slot cornerback was benched last week. Robert McClain, he got benched for Leonard Johnson, and neither of them are good. Leonard Johnson himself, on 28 targets, he's allowed 23 receptions, only 5 incompletions, and Doug Baldwin himself has like an 85% completion ratio. So again, this is a game where Russell Wilson, he took too many shots down the field. He was almost forcing it to Tyler Lockett last week. And honestly, I think they come back home. I think they destroy Carolina. And I think that over the middle of the field is where you beat them. And Doug Baldwin's it's just too good of a matchup. And him at 6,700, I think he's one of the safest plays in cash. And I think he's got tournament upside as well. One player that, man, I know nobody wants to hear this name, but what about Jarvis Landry at 5,400 with Devontae Parker out against Baltimore?
Nope.
He's on my list. I like him.
Jake doesn't like him?
I do not like Jarvis Landry at all this year. Period. I get the appeal, but we've said this before. I'm done going down this road. I understand. you guys can go for it. I completely understand, but if I'm going to go after somebody in this game, it's going to be Kenny Stills. I'm not going to do Jarvis Landry. I'll go for Kenny Stills and the fact that they can get him deep on a play for 30 yards and hopefully go for there. My biggest problem with it is I know the Baltimore Ravens pass defense has been really good. They've actually improved over the past couple of weeks, mostly because of their run defense and their ability to keep that in check and send more players after the quarterback, is I'm relying on Ryan Tannehill. And Ryan Tannehill on the road against the Baltimore defense. I can't do it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. You're the one that brought him up.
So Jarvis Landry, the reason I like him, obviously, I just said Devontae Parker's not going to play this game. Kenny Stills, yeah, he's actually on my list here as like a low ownership guy. Like I think you could play him at less than 5% in the tournament, and that's fine. Because but the thing is, he'll probably draw Jimmy Smith if Jimmy Smith plays, and he's their best corner. Whereas Jarvis Landry kind of moves around; he's mainly in the slot. And you have to figure. So every team does move the ball down the field, as we saw with the Bears last week. We've seen that. Baltimore's coming off a big division win, like a game they put a lot into against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know it's a little narrative street and this and that, but like, think about it. Jay Ajayi is not going to run the ball in Baltimore. Baltimore allows just 2.7 yards per carry at home, and a team is going to have at least 200 yards total offense. So if we're looking at that, it's got to go somewhere. And if we're talking about DraftKings, which is a PPR website, I think Jarvis Landry can be talked about in cash. I don't think he's a tournament play just because he doesn't have touchdown upside. Like, he barely ever scores a touchdown. But at 5,400, he's nice. And I think Inman, like, Joe, what about Inman? Have you looked at him?
Yeah, quickly on Landry. I mean, my main issue with him was kind of that lack of upside that you're talking about. But, I mean, his salary is down $1,800 since week 10, where it was at his peak. And it's the lowest point it's ever been on DraftKings since week 17 of 2014. So, I mean, just that target upside alone with Devontae Parker kind of looking doubtful at this point, probably not going to play. The Ravens are that funnel, kind of reverse funnel defense. So the running game is going to probably do nothing. The tight ends, they defend very well. But in at least our 4-for-4 metric, they're 24th against wide receivers. So I think the targets that he's going to get are going to be probably higher than they have been the past couple of weeks. And yeah, he might not have touchdown upside, but in tournaments, who cares? Like, I think you can't play him in tournaments because what if he does get in the end zone? I think his floor is probably 15 points on DraftKings this week. And at 5,400, I think he's a very good play.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Do you guys have anybody else at wide receiver you want to talk about? I mentioned Inman. I don't know if you guys liked him or not, but I think he's like the only healthy wide receiver in San Diego right now, which is why I think he's intriguing at 5,200.
Yeah, but Tyrell said that he played through today, practice, and everything's fine. His same injury he played through in college. So I'm going to trust him because he played through multiple games with that injury in college. Granted, I don't want him in any lineup because he could get one hit and get knocked out of the game, but that's why it dampens my – I was in on Inman before Tyrell Williams said he was good to go for this week. The two that I like that we haven't mentioned, Michael Crabtree with the Darby situation. I think that helps his upside for this week a lot. I like Michael Crabtree in the $6,000 range. And then somebody who I was originally off of at the beginning of the week because Tyrann Mathieu had moved back into the slot. But guess what? Tyrann Mathieu's not playing this week. Jamison Crowder, I've been playing him so much this league. He's going to be back in my lineups again. I think I've probably had him, I want to say at least 8 out of 11 weeks so far.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the areas that Washington can actually attack on Arizona now with Mathieu out. And Mathieu hasn't been playing great this year, but I looked at it. I looked even closer after finding out about Mathieu, and Jamison Crowder has actually done better on the road this year. He's averaging on the road 8.4 targets, 6.2 receptions, 83 yards per game on the road. So I think he's in play. at 5,800.
Crowder's. I was going to kind of ask you guys what you think about the Washington game, because I think Crowder's really good play. He's definitely a guy I haven't played enough of this year. Jake, you've been playing him a lot. I wish I was you, but what do you guys think?
Big fan. I was originally on Garcon with Matthew playing, but now I'm right back to Crowder.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think Amari Cooper's ownership is going to be like in kind of a big tournament?
I think it's going to be low. I don't see him being very highly owned, honestly. He'll match up Stephen Gilmore, I think, the most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's every other game with him and Crabtree, right? So it's Cooper's week now, right?
Well, Darby being out helps Crabtree more because that's the side that he lines up on more often.
Right. It kind of fluctuates. Their ownership fluctuates too, though. I really like Crabtree as well. I think you can. I mean, this is another game. There's just so many places that kind of in the wide receiver is this. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards. There's weeks where I kind of want to play one lineup and go high stakes, and there's weeks where I kind of want to play exposures. And this is kind of framing to be more of an exposure week for me, just because there's a lot of wide receiver plays this week that I think you can get at low ownership that are in really good spots.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why if you're going to go that route, I would go Carr Cooper, because I think a lot of people don't realize that Carr was fine when he came back into the game and are going to be scared about that index finger or the pinky finger.
Yeah. No, he looked fine after that. I think it was his finger. That was crazy. I saw it. Actually, I was watching that game live when that happened. It was pretty sick. One more player, but before we go to tight end, I'm just going to mention if you're playing a lot of tournaments, I think it's interesting to throw Ted Ginn in one. Honestly, Seattle's been vulnerable to the deep ball, and it would help obviously if Earl Thomas isn't playing. That would help. But they're starting to use Ted Ginn in the way that they used him last year. His average depth of target over the first 9 weeks was just 13 yards, which is stupid. You're going to use him as a possession receiver, really? But over the last couple of weeks, his average depth of target is 20 yards downfield. So they're starting to get him the ball downfield. And so it's just I'm not saying to use him everywhere. Just saying he's like a punt play if you're looking for someone deep.
Yeah, he's a slightly better version than Tavon Austin.
Yeah, well, Tavon Austin's probably out, and he actually had the best matchup.
I don't have to rank him this week. It's the best news ever.
It is. He's the most difficult player. And by the way,
no, he's not. Look, you can get it. This will help your accuracy rankings, Mike, for next year. This is what I do. You rank Tavon Austin 60 to 65 every single week. You only miss out 2 or 3 times when he has that big game, but the other 90% of the time, you're right.
That's a good point. I like it.
You guys see my tweet about Tavon Austin right before lock?
I did.
Oh my God. So that was how I knew my week was over, just because I was totally kidding. I was looking through the Fantasy Labs model and trying to who was kind of at 0 to 1% owned, because I was kind of throwing some flyers up there, and I was like, God, should I throw him in there in the Superdome? Nah, I can't do it.
Oh, I thought you did. You should have. He actually put out there.
No.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
No, when he caught the touchdown, I'm like, oh, there's Joe's money.
I would love to take credit for that, but I can't.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's talk about a couple tight ends. It's a week where I feel like paying up for tight end. There are a few guys down there, but I don't know. I'm not really comfortable at tight end almost any week, but who do you guys want? I mean, me personally, I'd probably pay up for Jimmy Graham or Travis Kelce.
That's it.
Is that it?
Yeah, I think you can make an argument for Antonio Gates at 4,100. Mm-hmm. I mean,
lower ownership.
I think he might be more popular than people think. But I mean, he's missed a couple games, but he's still top 10 in the league in red zone targets, and they're going to try and get him that record, and we're running out of games. I still think at some point there could be a week where, he gets 1 touchdown and they look for him for another one. So 2 touchdown upside is definitely something that could happen. I really like Ebron. What do you guys think of Ebron this week?
Yeah, New Orleans have been better against tight ends than I thought they would be.
They're middle of the pack, though. They're middle of the pack. And here's the thing, to go all the way back when we talk about quarterbacks, the one good thing, and you mentioned the plays with the Detroit Lions, but on the reverse side of it, the Saints at home, second highest plays per game, which in turn their opponents end up doing the 9th highest plays per game when in the Superdome. So if we're looking at this game, and Matthew Stafford had a big game against Andrew Luck, had a big game against Aaron Rodgers, when Carson Wentz had a pretty good game against them, he kind of steps up to that competition when they're running a lot of plays and passing a lot. So I think if you're looking at this game, Marvin Jones being banged up, now you're looking at Anquan Bolden, Eric Ebron for these red zone opportunities. I think this is bounce back week. The only concern I have is similar to Brandon Cooks. There are going to be a lot of people saying, oh, you got to get Eric Ebron at that price, because there's no way he does that all over again after last week.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That does. Now, I like the Colin Gates. He actually was one on my list here that I thought would be at low ownership. So it's interesting to hear you say that you think he's going to be higher owned than we think. One of the other guys I had at low ownership was Ladarius Green. I know he's not playing enough snaps. That's the weird part. But as Jake knows, the Giants just struggle against tight ends.
Anybody half decent abuses them. You want to talk? You know what I would do if you're doing one of your Cam Newton lineups? I'd throw in Greg Olsen.
Yeah. He's so due. He's so overdue for a big game. I had him like in the cash game lineup I did last week, and somehow the lineup cashed, even though it was just like that. It was like last week was like death. We paid up. I never pay up for tight ends, dude, and I did last week in that lineup, and Greg Olsen just didn't do anything. So I actually agree with you. And Seattle is not the best team against tight ends. I think last year they were ninth. They allowed the ninth most fantasy points. This year their competition that they've played is weak. So I actually like that call.
It's like Vernon Davis, 3,300.
No.
Oh, no. Arizona, 282 yards total this year to tight ends, 0 touchdowns. And then it's not just like they face junk. They've given up 0-1 fantasy point in half their games. They face people like Greg Olsen. Half their games have been against good or great tight ends. They're shutting down everybody.
There's just no one down in that range. Like normally there's at least a guy kind of down there in the 3K range, and there's just no one this week. That's like super interesting to me, kind of in cash. I'm not playing any of these guys in tournaments. I don't think their upside is near.
You don't like Vance McDonald?
I was about to say actually Vance McDonald's interesting.
I just don't play him ever, so maybe that's.
He seems like the last 4 games. I think
throw for 250 yards. It's not going to be Quentin Patton.
It's not going to be Torrey Smith. We know that.
Yeah, Torrey Smith's going to catch 20 yards and maybe a touchdown. So Jeremy Curley, Vance McDonald, Carlos Hyde in the backfield. Vance McDonald's been doing what he did last year since Colin Kaepernick has taken over at quarterback. He's back into the range. He's getting targets every single week, and he's getting yards every single week.
I don't want to talk about Torrey Smith. I'm in a bad mood now.
We all missed at least one.
God, no, he was the guy I like tied my name to. Like I wanted people to know that I love Torrey Smith and
CJ Anderson. I mean, seriously, Mike.
I like CJ a lot too.
I screwed that up. The process I felt was right, but the result was not.
The logic made sense. There was nobody expected him to only get 60 targets again this year.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It was rough. It was rough. But guys, we're gonna make a tournament lineup. So this is the lineup. Every week we sit here and we create a tournament lineup, and we're going to try and do something that basically not a lot of people have. So if you guys want to play this in a tournament, it's not used for cash. Don't use the lineup for cash. So I think it's my week to start. So I'm just going to I really want to play Russell Wilson, guys. Are you guys okay with that?
Yep. I said he was going to probably be my highest exposure in tournaments this week at the position. Like it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
Then I'll take the easy one. Are we going to pair him with Baldwin or Graham? I'm okay with either one.
I'm okay with either one, honestly, too.
I like Baldwin.
All right, we'll go Baldwin.
All right, and that way we can maybe do Gates. I don't know. There we go. So, all right.
All right, do we want DJ or Le'Veon?
I would say DJ.
Kind of like Le'Veon, but let's go DJ. I'm not going to turn that down.
We just did the majority vote. I'm going with you on this one, Joe.
Okay. I like Le'Veon this week.
Mike.
If I had to pick one.
All right, so we're going Le'Veon?
Yeah.
All right. Now I got to find someone cheap. All right, let me think. Man, I'm really torn now. I kind of want to go Deion Lewis because I'm looking for somebody really cheap for us because we obviously just spent up a little bit.
You got to put your Willie Snead in.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, we got room for Snead.
Let's do Snead. Yeah, well, I'll go Snead. That's fine.
Okay. And then let's see, because you were saying cheaper at running back. I'm trying to find not too cheap, but kind of an okay.
Do not play Denard Robinson.
We got room for Riddick or no? What's Riddick's price?
58.
I was going to go even lower.
He's more than Hyde. Hyde's 53.
If you guys let me, that's where I was going.
Hyde?
Yeah.
My dude. Yes. Makes me happy.
You guys love Hyde. I just can't.
He's so good.
I should. He is good. He's one of the guys I really liked this offseason, and
he's so good.
I should play him more than I do. Okay, I'm good with that. So we got about 4K per guy, so we need some savings. Let's go Tyreek Hill. I don't think it's a thin play, honestly. I really like Tyreek Hill this week, so we should probably play Spencer Ware too, because Tyreek Hill will probably do nothing.
You know what? Just by the way, while you're looking, Mike, somebody we didn't mention at wide receiver that I just noticed because he's right above it, who I've been playing a good exposure of, Will Fuller.
Will Fuller,
Green Bay Packers for what They're
using Braxton Miller so much, man. Like lately.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. And honestly, like I saw his name, like, because I obviously go through every player on the show during the week, and I saw Will Fuller, and I was just like, it's kind of like a Tyler Lockett thing for me. Like, I want to keep playing Tyler Lockett because you know he's going to have a blow-up game, and when he does, he's going to make your lineup so good. But it's just like, man, you're just every week it's just like pounding your head against the wall.
Well, here's all you need to know is the fact that I hate Will Fuller this year, and if I'm in on him, that should tell you something.
It's true. It's just there's those guys that, like, you play so much that it just doesn't even matter when they finally go off because that's just going to make you break even. So I just rather not play them.
So let's talk about
the first time I ever played Will Fuller this year.
All right. So we each have 2 picks in. Let's what do we want to do at defense? I just want to get this out of the way, and then we can kind of talk through the tight end and the flex.
Spend some time talking about defenses since somebody asked about that.
Yeah. Who's some defenses you guys like?
Well, I did mention the Steelers. I do think this is an opportunity where they get some points because of Eli Manning. I think there are safer plays out there. One I really do like is, as much as I love Mike Evans, I think this could also be a Jameis Winston 2-3 interception game with the way that the Chargers defense has been playing, getting those turnovers. That's all we want. We want turnovers so they can turn into points, possibly scoring one of them. I think the Chargers defense are another intriguing play in that aspect.
I think goes without saying, Broncos are going to be very chalky against Blake Bortles, but they are very expensive. I almost like the Broncos more in cash, I think, than in tournaments. So I think you do kind of need the savings.
I think the Jaguars are going to end up chalky now.
Yeah, I think they are too.
Yeah, that game's just going to suck. So I can see that.
It's going to be a brutal game. But yeah, I do like the Broncos defense, but you're probably right. It's probably going to be highly owned. But, I mean, our lineup right now, we don't have, like, a stud wide receiver, so ours is already contrarian enough.
Mm-hmm.
No interest, just by the way, it's talking defenses out. Any interest on the Bengals with Carson Wentz and a banged-up Jordan Matthews?
Definitely interested in them. At home, yeah, they should be favored now.
What's the spread on that game now? It moved, didn't it?
It had to have, because the Bengals were actually a 1-point underdog, and, like, with the news with Jordan Matthews and stuff, like, I can't see them not being a favorite in this game. I'll tell you, Carson Wentz has been awful. He couldn't even get going against Green Bay last week, man. Like,
it opened at 1 to Philly. It's now 1.5 for Cincinnati. The over/under is 42.
Yeah,
I think we can go Pittsburgh with Le'Veon though, and that gives us some flexibility at 2,800.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so
all right.
We got 5K per left. That should give us some options.
So do we want to pay up at tight end and go with, like, Graham, or do we want to go down to Gates? And then if we went with Gates, that would leave us 59 for the flex, which we could put in Theo Riddick or something.
I was going to say, if you slap an Ebron, it gets you to the Devontae Freeman.
You can go Graham and then Sanu, since we don't have Julio. Gives us.
We don't have any Falcons.
That is true.
If we wanted to go to Graham, I think that's our best option. But
we're game stacking Wilson, Baldwin, and Graham. I'm fine with it.
I love it.
Man, I wish Marvin Jones was okay today.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, then we can go down 4,500. Is that where Sanu's at? 44, I think.
44, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
It's kind of stars and scrubs, but that's kind of what lineup construction is leading you to this week. I hope that's not. I mean, it's going to be popular. Like, our lineup construction isn't very contrarian. We have some contrarian plays, which I think can kind of.
It's different.
Okay.
It's different though. So I'll recap it for you guys if you're listening. We have Russell Wilson at quarterback. At running back, we have Le'Veon Bell and Carlos Hyde. Wide receiver, we have Doug Baldwin, Willie Snead, Tyreek Hill. Tight end, Jimmy Graham. Flex, Mohamed Sanu. And the defense, the Steelers.
We should touch on, too, you should put Baldwin in your flex so that if you are in a position to be high up in a tournament, you kind of have that chance to late swap. It's the 7:30 game. So anytime you have those late guys, they need to be in your flex, because if you're drawing dead, you might as well throw kind of a Hail Mary, play someone like Curse or Lockett in that flex spot and give yourself a chance to kind of leap the field a little bit from where you're at.
That's a great point. Joe, if you want to touch on that more, like a lot of people don't take advantage of that on DraftKings, because on FanDuel, they don't have late swaps. So if you're playing on DraftKings, I think the stat that came out is, what was it, 85% of people that play on DraftKings have never used the late swap feature.
Oh, I mean, it's the biggest advantage of the entire site. In tournaments, you can do it even in cash games. Like, say you have a terrible 1 p.m. slate, like just awful. So half your lineups are like completely dead. you at least want to give yourself a chance, right? And the only way you're going to do that is if you get low in plays. It doesn't do you any good to have Doug Baldwin at 25% when you're not even like close to the cash line. Like you're better off at least giving yourself some sort of opportunity in cash games. Like something that I think people don't do as well is like go through your head-to-heads probably after the 4 p.m. games, and you can kind of reverse engineer what your opponent has. And if you think you have the same player left and you're behind and that's the only player you have left, like give yourself some opportunity. Like who cares if that player goes off for you? You're going to lose anyway. You might as well have a chance to beat this guy with some guy that gets a fluky touchdown.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. And that's the thing. A lot of people that kind of like just look past. Anything you wanted to say before we get out of here, Jake?
No, I'm good.
Good. Well, I feel like we had a good grasp on the games, guys. We talked about a lot of players. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to hit us all up on Twitter. Jake is at AllInKid. Joe is at Joe Holka. Myself at Mike Tagliere NFL. I don't know if I'm going to have much time to answer many questions, though. I am actually, once the show is over, I am getting on an airplane going to Chicago. My mom planned a baby shower for the wife and I, so we're going to be in Chicago. So if you guys do come by the Lights Out Live show on Sundays, it's going to be taking place probably on Periscope. I think that's the way I'm going to have to do it because I can't stream from my mom's house on Twitch. Like going to visit there, I can't do it. So I will let you guys know on Twitter one way or the other how I'm doing that. But thank you guys as always for tuning in. And remember, if you're playing DFS and if you're starting to get more and more into it, go check out rototracker.com/POR. Again, it really helps us out, guys. So thank you guys as always for tuning in. And until next time, lights out.